to welcome our very special guest this evening, Suzanne Gieseman. Suzanne is a messenger of hope and the founder and teacher of the Awaken Way, a path to knowing who you are and why you're here. A former US Navy commander who served as commanding officer and aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Today, she provides stunning evidence of the existence of universal consciousness and our interconnectedness. Suzanne is an author of 12 books and an inspired person and a way shower. She has been a keynote presenter for organizations, including Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies, the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and the International Association for Near-Death Studies. She's led weekend retreats at well-known spiritual centers, including the Omega Institute, Lilydale Assembly, and the Unity Village. And she's written and narrated the popular Mediumship, a series of hemi-sync recordings. Suzanne's gift of evidential mediumship has been tested and proven. Her work has been recognized as highly credible by noted afterlife researchers and organizations, whether in her books and CDs, her classes and workshops, her Message of Hope Unity online radio show, or her one-to-one session. Suzanne brings message of hope, healing, and love that go straight to the heart and illuminate those around her. It really is a special privilege to have Suzanne Gieseman on the show this evening, and I'd like to welcome her. Good evening, Suzanne.
Good evening, Julian. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I think it's a real fitting end to our 2018 live events to have somebody like yourself on who has an incredible story and some amazing things to tell us. So, Suzanne, tell us a little bit of those people who know you and those people who don't know you. I know that there was a number of major events in history, and one in particular that changed your way, because mediumship and the word medium, and I know I've read some of your bits and pieces, you call it the M word sometimes, it didn't come used to, yeah. So it wasn't something that, you know, like myself, a young boy, there was events that sort of took you down this road. Tell us a little bit about that, and in particular, the story around about 9/11.
Sure. You and I were chatting before the show that you've been seeing spirits and known about the spirit world for most of your life, but I certainly didn't. If I had, I'm not sure I would have pursued a career in the Navy, but I was drawn to a military career and spent 20 years in the Navy with no awareness whatsoever that there was a greater reality, and certainly no precognition that I would one day be working as a medium. So I had a wonderful career. I loved my time in the Navy, but it was very what I call left-brained. It was all focused on the material world. And as you mentioned, I was the aide to the head of the United States Armed Forces, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's the number one guy. His role is to advise the president on military matters. And on September 11th, 2001, he and I were in the, what was it? It was the head of the Air Force's aircraft on the way across the Atlantic Ocean when we heard about the attacks on New York City. The attack on the Pentagon hadn't yet happened. I want to tell you, Julian, that we were on our way to Europe, and later that week we were going to be in England, and the general was going to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth. So I know that you can appreciate how excited that I was about that. And when we had to turn around, I was mostly focused on what was happening back in the US, but later, much later, when things settled down a bit, I thought how disappointing that we never got to do that. But when we turned back and headed back to the US, we were the last aircraft in US airspace at the time and flew over the burning World Trade Center towers, returned to the Pentagon, our office building, which we had just left that morning. And I stood there in the grass outside the building looking at that gaping crater and just thinking about the people who had just lost their lives, people just like I was, military officers who were serving our nation from our hearts, and just thinking, why were some people in the wrong place at the wrong time? But I had no spiritual answers for that because I had no spiritual background. I didn't know if those people were gone forever, if the black curtain just came down, or if there was a greater reality. It was very, very up close and personal, that event for me, especially working in the Pentagon for the 3 days afterwards that the building continued to burn. I had to go to work because of my position. And it shook me to the core that man could do that to mankind. And that's when I began asking the questions, is there a greater reality? And why were some people in the wrong place at the wrong time? And I turned to traditional religion for a short while, starting to read and see, is this going to provide me answers? Is this going to bring me peace to know that these people who passed are okay? But actually it didn't satisfy me at all. And so I just kind of pushed all that aside because the standard religion and dogma didn't answer my questions. So when I was able to retire from the Navy with exactly 20 years of service, I retired that very day. And my husband and I sold our house, sold our cars, and literally sailed off into the sunset on a sailboat. I can keep going if you'd like and share the real catalyst to my discovery of the mediumship, if you'd like.
No, definitely. I think, it is such a powerful start to the story that just keeps building, and as I said, I've done my research and I've looked at your history, and it really is moving. It's tear jerking. It's powerful. It is inspirational. So please carry on.
Okay, so basically, if I'm honest with myself, we ran away from life by going off sailing. It had always been a dream, but I could have stayed in the Navy for another 10 years. But it was too painful. And I just said, we have to live our dreams while we can. Nothing wrong with that. I had done my time. And so we sailed off, and life was pretty idyllic for a couple of years. We sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and we're sailing through the Mediterranean. But as I found now that I've gone down the spiritual path, life has a way of catching up with us. We come here to learn certain lessons, and we get what we call wake-up calls. 9/11 had the possibility of being that wake-up call for me, but it wasn't enough to really awaken me. So unfortunately, we got that wake-up call in the form of a phone call while we were in Croatia that told us that my husband's daughter, Susan, my stepdaughter, who was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, had been crossing the flight line at work, and out of the blue, a bolt of lightning came down and struck her and killed her. And worst of all, she was 6 months pregnant with our first and what would be our only grandchild. So a double tragedy for our family. And as I mentioned, I ran away from tragedy when we went sailing, but now I couldn't run away from that. It was in my face. So where could I turn? I had turned outward to religion. That held no answers. So this time I turned inward, and I got answers I never expected.
That's truly amazing. And tell us a little bit about, how did all that start for you? How did you have your first messages, and where did that come from?
It started from that practice of going inward daily in hopes of finding out if there is a spirit world. It's in hopes of discovering that our Susan was not gone and just returned to ashes and dust to dust, but truly a spirit still alive and still able to communicate with our family. I had certainly done enough reading in the past just out of curiosity about these people called mediums who could connect with so-called spirits, but never had any personal experience of that. So I began meditating daily, sitting in the silence with the very strong intention to connect personally with our Susan. And while I didn't have that experience immediately, I did have the experience daily of peace, greater intuition, and then starting to have things fall into place so easily I couldn't explain it. Life started to flow. And while all of that was going on, I dragged my husband to a medium. What's really funny, Julian, is he told me later he didn't even know what a medium was. He just, I said, honey, I'd like to go see a medium. And he answered the perfect answer for a husband. Yes, dear. So he went along with me, and that woman changed our lives. And I can tell you now, I just got an email today from a father I did a reading for just a couple of weeks ago, and he said the 50 minutes that we spent together were life-changing. And that's my goal every time that I do a reading for someone, that they have the kind of experience that that medium gave our family when we spent 50 minutes to an hour with her. It turned my entire worldview upside down, because there was no other explanation for the fact that she had brought through verifiable evidence, details about our Susan, that showed us Susan was right there in the room with us. I have goosebumps right now, which was exactly what we wanted. And being left-brained and skeptical, I tried to pick apart how she might have known those things, how she might have picked up some of that information. The only explanation was that Susan was right there with us, validating what our hearts wanted to know and what our souls knew was true. So I wanted to tell the world, mediumship is real. Mediums are not making things up. They're not frauds. Maybe there are some people out there, but we had found a real one, and she changed our lives. So I began writing some books about mediumship, still having no idea that I would one day be one. And in the process of writing the biography of medium Janet No Havoc, discovered that I had that ability as a result of, at that point, 2 years of daily sitting in the power in meditation.
Meditation is just such a fundamental thing, and actually, it's something that I teach in my courses. Is there's different types of meditation for me anyway. We talk about mindfulness quite a lot, which is just being able to connect with yourself, then sitting in the power for spiritual development. Then what I call as a power meditation, which is when I go into that just to connect for mediumship. And you're right, and some of the things, and just a very quick story. I was doing readings this week, and I had this lady's father just come in, walk straight in behind her, didn't say a word, and he just said, Bonnie. And I thought, do you know what? Because in Scotland, Bonnie means, bright and lovely. Yes. And I said, he's calling you Bonnie. She said, no, he's not. I said, no, he's saying Bonnie. He's calling you Bonnie. He said, he's not calling me Bonnie. He said, Bonnie was his dog that died a week before he passed.
Oh, my.
And I'm like, okay.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But when you have those moments, you talk about it. And then she looked at me and she just said, I know he's here. Yes. I know he's here. And those moments are just so special, aren't they? And so how have you cultivated? You've gone from, being sat in front of the medium, and then, as you say, sitting in the power for a while, cultivated it to where you are today, which is, just like one of the leading evidential mediums in the world.
Well, certainly you start out as a student, and I studied with Janet. I took her series of 3 classes, and then I had such success bringing through evidence every time I sat with another student in the class. It blew my mind to go that rapidly from not knowing there's a spirit world to knowing that Susan is still here, to writing about mediumship, and now connecting myself with verifiable evidence. I had to know, how do I get better at this? So I went and studied at the Arthur Findlay College in the UK, which was another turning point for me, because that's when I came home from England after just 1 week of, I called it boot camp for mediums. They just put you through the paces over there. I came home having had such success, for the first time truly feeling the presence of the spirit world. Until that point, I felt as if I were just pulling data out of the air. It wasn't personal. These weren't people I was communicating with. It wasn't psychic for me, but I hadn't opened up enough to truly feel the spirit world. That happened to me in just that 1 week at Arthur Findlay College. Experience is the greatest teacher other than our guides and our higher self. So I came back from Arthur Findlay College and just began doing readings for friends. And they went so well that they referred me to friends. And I took a few more classes here and there, but it was by doing and constantly asking my own guides in meditation, how can I get better? That I just continued to get better. And it's been a beautiful journey, and it's still unfolding. And it's like layers of an onion that come off one by one, but it's an endless onion that each layer that comes off reveals new and wondrous things. So it's the most beautiful blessing I could have ever imagined, to be able to help people now like that medium helped us, to show people the spirit world is real and our loved ones are right here, not some far off heaven. their world is our world.
And you're right. And Arthur Findlay, I'm probably like yourself, I'm a massive advocate of, because you sit in this wonderful place where some of the brightest forefathers have shone lights, and it is truly amazing. And to be able to sit there in that energy and be taught by some of the greatest teachers in the world today is so special. And it was very much like myself. It changed the way I thought about things and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So, you know, it's truly amazing.
May I speak up a second?
Yes,
I really need to give credit to my main teacher at Arthur Findlay College, who is Mavis Patilla, who I'm sure you've heard of, because she was senior tutor at Arthur Findlay College for several years and is just revered by every medium I've ever talked to, especially in the UK. The most wonderful compliment that I heard from a British medium was that there's nobody in the UK that doesn't love Mavis Patilla. And I had the honor of being in her small group at my first time I went to Arthur Findlay. And then I went back again in 2017 and again was in Mavis's group. And I've hosted her now in the United States maybe 3 or 4 times in Florida, where I live. And as a result of that, we've become very good friends and colleagues, which is such an honor. And I've been spending the last almost a year now, 8 months, writing Mavis Patilla's biography. Wow. And that in itself is an education and an honor. So I'm steeped in spiritualism right now and the whole Arthur Findlay world as I write about Mavis's journey as well.
It's fantastic, and I'm glad you shared that with us, because you're very blessed to be in that room, especially a small class with somebody who is just such a wonderful light. One of the things I'd like to ask you really is can you tell us some of the bits and pieces, and is there one piece of my dog's barking at the moment, apologies, but they say never work with animals, but unfortunately he's upstairs. Is there one piece of evidence with yourself, or one story you can tell us that was such a moving event for both yourself and the person you were working with?
There are so many, but as you asked that, one of my favorites is when I sat with a mother whose son had passed. All I knew was that she had a child who had crossed the veil, and she was in deep, deep grief. And he came through so clearly. He immediately showed me that he had taken his own life. And he told me so many things that I couldn't have known. He showed me that he jumped from a bridge. He showed me it was the Verrazano Bridge in New York City, that much detail. And, he told me about his work. He explained why he took his life, very evidential, showed me that he was not taking the medication that his mother knew he should have been taking, all kinds of evidence. And as the reading came to an end, I realized, just talking to him silently, you didn't tell me what kind of work you did. That would be interesting and a nice evidence for your mother. And instead of telling me what he did, he said, and he put his hand out like that, and he said, well, I did what your husband is doing right now. And I looked out the window, which was behind my client's back, and my husband was kneeling down at the back of our recreational vehicle, stripping wires on the hitch. And I looked at his mother and I said, and your son tells me he was an electrician. And she said, yes, he was. And so for the uninitiative to think through the intelligence of the spirit world, how that was presented, that takes away any skeptic's ability to say, you were just reading the mind of that client. I wasn't reading her mind, because she doesn't know that I asked him, and he showed me something she couldn't see. And it was very interactive, which to me tells me I'm not pulling data out of the air. I'm talking to a real person. So it's just a beautiful story with multiple layers of truth to it. And Julian, for some reason, I can't hear you at all.
Sorry, there we go.
Why? There we go.
Yeah, just those moments of validation are just so important, aren't they? For yourself as well, because we're all students, we're all developing, we're all working, and we want to give those those moments of, and sometimes they can be the most quirky pieces of information as well. I remember going to see a medium once, and I'd lost my father, which was a big awakening for me. And he said, oh my God. And we just started reading. It was like, this curry's so hot. I can't, God, and my father used to eat really hot curries.
Oh,
And that one piece of evidence. And it was just amazing. It was just,
sometimes that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. You're inspiring a lot of people in the room as well, you know, saying that, you know, it's great for you guys, and the information you're giving is really inspiring other people. With people who are coming into mediumship, what sort of advice would you give them when you've had a bad day, when you've had a down, and, you know, you've done a reading and you've had lots of no's, and how do you pick people?
The advice is that we don't do these readings for ourselves. And anybody who has this as a calling knows why we do this. We do this to serve, and we serve both worlds. We serve our client, the sitter, and we especially serve those in the spirit world who no longer have a physical voice, who so badly want to let their loved ones know, I'm okay, I love you, my passing was fine. And so when we have a bad day, we just need to remember it's not about us. Get that out of the way, and I'm here for you. If this is your calling, that speaks to the heart, and we're willing to put ourselves out there again and again and again just to be there, because we know we can trust the spirit world. And with that trust and that calling, they'll be there for us.
You're right. And I was talking to somebody in Medium the other day, and I do some mentorship myself, and they given this really graphical reading about somebody who passed, a young baby, and it really affected them. And I was like, well, I've got some bad news for you, my friend. You're gonna have to do it again and again and again and again, because if you have this innate ability to be able to, you know, compassionately bring through children in such a vivid but in heartwarming way, then maybe that's your vocation now. So the fact that you may not want to do it is actually depriving other people of that life-changing moment, of that, you know, helping to lift those levels of grief.
Yeah, and you talk about that. It's stunning. And I believe the word gets out in the spirit world. We have a medium here who can help us, because last month, in 10 consecutive readings that I did, Julian, 10 different spirits came through who had taken their own life. It was incredible to me. And the only way I can explain that is that there was a community of spirits who knew each other because they'd all passed by suicide. And they said, let's put this medium together with our family. And I believe we are often set up by the spirit world, brought together, or they're led to me somehow by these, what Mavis Patilla calls droplets of God, the thoughts that come from those in the spirit world, impressing our consciousness. Time to go find a medium, and they guide you to just the right website. And 10 different people who had taken their lives found me 10 readings in a row. And let me tell you, I had to do a lot of saging of this room, not because they had bad spirits, but because the grief was so heavy from this side. And it was such a blessing to show their families that even though they had passed in that way, they were still full of love, in a place of love, and wanted to let their loved ones know that.
No, it's amazing, isn't it? And I think, you know, sometimes we and I do see some mediums, they say, I always get, you know, granddads, I always get mums, I always get children. And I think sometimes it is about that, isn't it? And I joke when I do a mediumship development group, and I actually talk about something you just said there really was like because I talk about, you know, even I think Spirit up there may even like have some sort of like TripAdvisor score. So when we send our lights up, they look at them and go, yeah, this guy's the real deal. He's authentic. And I'm going to go to him. You know, they might, I'm 4.8 out of 5. You know what I mean? They might say, who knows? Spirit Advisor. You know, maybe it is there. But I do believe that that relationship between ourselves and spirit is the same as our relationship with me and my son or my brother or my mother or whoever it is here on the earth. And I talk about thinking about the spirit world to be the same as us, you know, and I think mediums who are less than authentic, I think when they send their lights up, they go, not for me, you know. And
that's a 1 star, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's a 1 rating. Yeah. Don't go there. The food. But you know, that's very much for me, and it's about building those relationships. So you know, we all talk about, you know, when we're practicing and we're learning, but do you work with your guides, and were they something that later on coming through your development, or are they up front and center with you, or are they a little bit more on the peripheral? How do you work with your spiritual team, should we say?
My guides, I talk to them every day. I have a group called Sanaya, and I would hope people listening would go check out Sanaya on my website, SuzanneGieseman.com, because they have given us such wisdom over the years, thousands of daily messages. But they also are my individual teachers, and they don't teach me every day. If I have a specific question, oh my goodness, they will just be so forthcoming with teaching, not during the reading. During the reading, they leave me alone. I know they're there, but they're in the background. I want that connection with the spirit with whom I'm connecting to be pure and direct, but I know they're there. However, after a reading, if something new came up or I had a question about something, I'll ask my team and I'll say, how could I have done that better? Or what happened? What was that all about? And the teaching is tremendous. This is what I want everybody to know. We all have guides, and the best guidance comes from within. Yeah. And you're muted again.
Yeah, I'm having some tech problems here. But no, it is building that wonderful relationship, though, isn't it? And you're right. Yes. I think personally, when I set my intention, and a lot of things over here in the UK, when I'm teaching as well, they don't understand sometimes the intention. It's about setting that intention and sitting with spirit. When you set that intention of, you know, being able to bring through and have that pure connection for somebody who's in front of you, or reading, or whatever the scenario is so important, isn't it? And then about having that one-to-one connection and being able to bring those, you know, real messages through. Is there any sort of tips, or how would you help people who really want to strengthen that one-to-one connection?
Well, you mentioned in the biography that I have a series of HemiSync CDs, and the latest one just came out. It's called Working with Your Guides, and there's some wonderful exercises in there for strengthening that. And it's a daily practice, and it's a relationship that we develop just like we would with a teacher here. I wanted to tell you, just to let people know how very real this is. I traveled 2 hours yesterday to go south of here in Florida to speak to a group of parents who have children across the veil. And I knew there would be about 40 parents, and I was going to do a demonstration of mediumship and bring through several of their kids for the group. And on the way there, my guides I could feel them in the car. They were talking to me as I was driving, and they put in my mind's eye the image of a peacock. Now, I don't see peacocks very often. I can't tell you when the last time I've seen anything with a peacock was. So I saw it. It was clear. I knew they had given it to me. And I said, okay, I guess that's going to come up in one of the readings, but I couldn't imagine how somebody's child was going to bring up a peacock. So the evening started, and I was demonstrating with another medium. Marlene Stovall is her name. And Marlene was up demonstrating. She walked in, we greeted each other. She was demonstrating. It was my turn to sit down. We went back and forth several times, and I sat down, and my guides dropped in, and they said, doesn't she look nice tonight? And I thought, yes, she looks very nice. And they said, no, doesn't she look nice tonight? And I looked up, and her top was all a peacock pattern. It was peacock feathers all over it. And it was just, this is a God wink, is what I call it. This is the most beautiful evidence that, yes, it sounds beautiful. Oh, my guides were riding in the car with me on the way. You know, that to a skeptic would be just something nice somebody might say, but that's what I'm talking about. Things that you can verify, evidence like that. They knew that Marlene was on the way, like I was, and how she was dressed.
It's incredible, isn't it? But those are the moments though, where everything just falls into place, and it gives you that, you know, again, I talk about, you know, belief is one thing, faith is another. And having that, you know, when you have the belief in something, yes, you can see it, it's tangible, etc. But faith sometimes is putting your whole surrendering to spirit, showing complete faith to spirit, because you may not always see it, you may not always feel it, but you're giving over to that level of faith and surrendering. And for me, that's been huge in terms of, you know, the quality and the strength of the connection and relationship with myself and with spirit as well. So those moments are extremely special. Tell us about your books, because, you know, some people say we've all got a book in them. You've got 12. So tell us a little bit about your books and where the inspiration come from, and what topics they cross. And I know you've done a lot of stuff with the afterlife as well, and spoke, scientifically as well as everything else. And you've had a lot of your evidence, ratified as well, and it's huge what you've done. And tell us a little bit about your books and the afterlife side of things.
Well, it's funny because at 12 years old, I knew I was meant to write, but I had nothing to write about. I had no life experiences. I had a very normal childhood, but that it was just within. I can do it with the experience of having written so many books. So my first one about mediumship was about medium Anne Gaiman, the priest and the medium. And it's really funny because I wrote her biography before I discovered I am a medium. So people read that book now and they read the title, The Priest and the Medium, and they think that my husband Ty used to be a priest, which is hilarious because he's not very far from that. He's a retired destroyer captain in the Navy. And then I wrote Janet No Havoc's biography. And then lo and behold, I discovered I'm a medium. So I wrote my memoir, because of that very unexpected transition from Navy commander to medium. So that book is Messages of Hope, but it's much more than my story. It's filled with the verifiable evidence that came through along the way, and how I met my team Sanaya, and how I discovered that the spirit world is so very real and so very near. So even people who have no intention of being mediums learn a lot from them. It's a good book for people who are grieving. I had the honor of telling the story of a young man named Wolf, his nickname was Wolf, who came through me in a couple of readings with phenomenal evidence, to the point where I now, with no reservations, say Wolf's message, which is the title of the book, contains proof that we are souls here and now. And his message for all of humanity is revealed in that book. It's a tremendous story that really awakens people as they read it. Let me see, my book Still Right Here is my most recent one that tells the story of 4 couples with children on the other side, and the beautiful evidence from those kids and the way they show us that they don't exist in some far off reality. They're still part of our ongoing everyday lives now, and so want us to know that. And then I have a couple of compilations of Sanaya's daily messages. I did kind of like a daily devotional books, 2 full years of those messages. That's a nice thing to just pick up and put down at the end of the day when you need to be uplifted. The energy of Sanaya comes through in their words, and it just opens our hearts and ignites the soul.
It's lovely messages, and they're so important, to give that lifting of grief and validation to the person you're working with, and also just to give yourself that little bit of increasing in the faith, in other words, because how could you know these things? And exactly. I always tell a story. I was doing a demonstration, and there was a lady in the audience, and I said, they're showing me like this alligator. There was like a door, a draft excluder on a door, and it was like a long alligator, and she's like, yeah. No, I can't take that. She said, I don't understand. I said, well, look, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to give it to you. And then on the Facebook page the very next day, her friends, she'd been moaning about being cold in work, and her friends had bought to this alligator draft excluder. And it's just nice. It's just incredible, really. And then
yes,
and you just
awesome.
You think, it just gives you that wonderful feeling that life is everlasting, and we don't die, which is amazing. So those experiences for us are just truly amazing, and I thank you already for coming on and sharing a lot of the stuff that you're talking about here. And I know there's lots of people in the audience as well of saying wonderful things, and they're talking about how your Hemi-Sync CDs are truly outstanding. So there's lots of people out there enjoying the work that you did. I suppose it's gone from the Navy where you're looking to save lives now, and it's the same thing really, I suppose, because some of the things you talk about in terms of suicide, etc. You're still saving lives, but you're just not on a ship anymore. So in many ways your work is the same again. So how would you say when you wake up every morning, how do you feel being, somebody who's got a lot of responsibility, because people want to come to you and they want you to, to work with them and help them along the way. How do you feel in the mornings when you wake up and you think, right, I've got to go again today? How does that feel?
I want to drop to my knees and give thanks. I'm so humbled by the honor of being trusted with this. I'm excited. What miracle is going to happen today? And to me, a miracle is when the spirit world, their presence penetrates into our awareness here, and we receive evidence that the two worlds are one. I feel sometimes a little overwhelmed by how many people need help and how much is on my plate. And then I know that the spirit world never gives us more than we can handle, and we just take it one bite at a time. So it's this mix, but because of the daily practice of meditation and presence, I have so many tools to just stay centered, and I balance that with earthly things such as daily exercise, so that I don't float off into the ethers, and take time to have fun and to maintain my relationship with my husband, so that I don't get out of balance. But each day, truly, the only days I wake up feeling kind of blah is I might have had a bad dream, and then I just clear my chakras. I have a beautiful free chakra clearing exercise on my website under resources and meditations called the 10-minute transformation. I use it myself all the time when I get a little bit gunked up, so to speak.
The afterlife is, and the evidence you provide is sensational, and it is difficult sometimes that there's people who are curious, but then you've really got the cynics. How do you deal with some people? You know, if you come across some real tough cookies in terms of demonstrations, and because I know there's lots of mediums that watch this program, what tips would you give to people who are, you know, when you come up against somebody who's very, very cynical?
I love it, because I don't go up against them. I'm just open. Spirit flows, and spirit knows what it's doing, and so I just be present. I am present. I share the evidence, and if that person is due to have an awakening, they will. And if it's their challenge to be closed off, if I'm open, I have no responsibility for that person. If they come at me, they can't hurt me. It just flows right through. These are some of the things that you learn on this path. The awakened way that you mentioned in the beginning, that it encompasses all of my teaching, is a conscious way of living and remembering who we are. And we are these beautiful souls here and now. A skeptic, because they're closed off, shows me that they simply haven't yet remembered their beautiful soul. They're identifying with the human side. And so I understand that, and I would never take them on. Just let spirit flow. It's very freeing.
It's great advice, and you know, I've seen it on several occasions. You know, especially sometimes a medium who is new, or they're up and coming, and they get this. You can feel, you know, and they're just like, oh, they freeze a little bit. And what you say is 100% right. It's just, you know, just be in the moment and just let it all through and feel.
Oh, I want to share you. You're reminding me of a reading I did for a man. He was just so uptight like this, and he was a skeptic, and I thought, oh my goodness, here we go. Because the medium needs to maintain a high vibration and high energy during a reading, and he was not the optimal sitter. But I'm telling you, his son really wanted to get through to that man, and the evidence his son brought through, the man, he let out this expletive at this one thing that I said. He just cursed, and he was like, how do you know that? And I said, your son just said it, and you could just see the walls coming down. And that's the beauty of a good evidential reading. The medium doesn't do it. This is what we as mediums need to remember. We don't do this. We have to get out of the way. And if we're worried about anything, including taking on a skeptic or even convincing a skeptic, we're worried about ourselves. So if we just put that to the side and say, I'm here for you, spirit world, what's supposed to happen will happen.
Lovely. And you have, I'm sat here now, and I'm just sort of, I'm sort of excited anyway, because of the level of the conversation, and I can just see all this beautiful light around you. Your energy and your aura. I think you you can just fill the room. I can sense it. We're going to get some questions in a few moments. So if you've got any questions in the audience, please feel free to pop that up. One, I'll give you an example that happened to me once. I had this lady, and she was sat in the front row like this, and a mother came in and she said, I'd like to speak to my daughter. And I was like, right, okay. I said, who's your daughter? She said, that lady there. And I was like, so I started doing some evidence. Yeah, one of those, oh, why me? And I was giving the evidence, and we were doing the bits and pieces. And then I said to the woman, I said, the mother, I said, now come on, you've asked me to help you and do the reading here. You have to give me something that's going to unlock this. Please give me a hand. And she just said to me straight away, tell Claire to unfold her arms. And I went, Claire, can you please unfold your arms? And she went, what? She said, how do you know my name's Claire? I said, I don't, but your mother does.
That's great.
And it was one of those moments.
That's
and those
wonderful.
are the things. Yeah, and you can't teach that though sometimes. You know, when people, when you're doing a development group and they say, and it's just understanding that relationship with spirit, to be able to go to spirit and say, look, you've asked me to give a reading to your daughter. Give me a break, give me a chance. You know what I mean? And what can we do? And those things are amazing. Have you had situations like that where you've gone to spirit and said, come on, have you had those situations?
Well, I just remember one reading where the reading went very well, but it was with this young boy's parents, and I so just wanted to end on a high note. And I'll admit, hearing myself say that's the human side, wanting to just leave them with something really big. And I remember saying to the son, okay, pull out all the stops now. Just give me one more thing that'll leave them something they'll never forget. And he showed me one of those little things that you make in the early years of your school, where you take construction paper and you make a chain out of them. You take colored paper and make a chain. He showed me that, and he showed me his sister. I said, your son is telling me his sister just made one of those paper chains, and it has something to do with him. And that the night before, his sister had made that with his name on it at a meeting of compassionate friends. And so, again, they help us because they're right here and you interact with them. And it's beautiful.
We're having some questions coming in now. So this is one question. It says, do you think there is a connection why specifically with your career and training you've been brought to this work? Do you think, everything that went on before in terms of your Navy career, do you think that was all put in place?
I know it was. We just had this discussion last night that every medium is different, and you have some that are comedians and they're funny and they go up to people on the street, and you have some who are shy and reserved, and then every one of us is different, so we're going to be drawn to different personalities that we resonate with. So here I am, this very left brain, still can give you a salute that'll make you come to attention, Navy commander. And I really see the brilliance in the spirit world of not showing me that I had this ability, because it leads to this story that people say, wow, I can believe her. So the people who need their left brain, like I used to be, that need to trust somebody like them, left brain and skeptical, I used to be very skeptical, are drawn to me. So I fill that niche for that community. And the cool thing is, I wasn't just a naval officer who went through a regular career. I served at the absolute highest level of the United States military. So I know the spirit world had a plan. The way that came about, me getting that position out of, why would this Special Forces Army general choose this female Navy officer who, to be his aide? It's all part of some big plan. And it was beautiful. Now people say, yeah, I believe that.
Now you're immersed in this spiritual energy and spiritual life. Do you look back now on some of the moments in your life and go, is there moments like that where you go, now I see where we're going with that?
Oh, sure, but not just the good ones, right? You can see patterns and how this led to that, everything in the awakened way. The first truth is you're a beautiful soul here and now who walks in both worlds at once. The second basic truth is we're part of one big web connecting all that is. And when you really look at it, this web goes across dimensions, and it's everybody we've ever met, and it's why we have synchronicities, and that's why every little thing along our path is part of that web. And before we run out of time, in case anybody's wondering, the third of the three basic principles of the awakened way that I teach is we find our way home with a capital H through the heart. The home being our true awareness that we are spirit, one divine mind. And we don't get there by thinking. That's why I wasn't aware of it for the first part of my life. I was always in the head. But now I've learned to do a reading. I have to get out of the head. Mediums in training, listening to this, you need to breathe and sink down into that heart space, balancing a little with the head because we need to communicate with our sitter. But sink into that heart space and expand outward to fill the fullness of who we are, which encompasses all the spirits who need to talk to us. This is the way we live our lives every day, not just doing a reading, and it leads to daily miracles.
It's I think I know the answer to this question, but Aletha says, do you think a person can be given the gift of mediumship in later life, or do you think most mediums are born with their abilities?
I can only speak to myself. 45 years old, 46 years old, when I discovered this ability, I believe that it lies latent in all of us because we are souls. We have the equipment, the basic equipment. Consciousness is spirit. It's what connects all of us. Now, is it your calling to be a medium? Definitely my calling. And because of that, these life events unfolded exactly as they were supposed to, and that calling became aware to me. Everybody can learn to do this. How far you go with it depends on, is it part of your life's purpose? Is it your calling?
Very well put. We have a lady called Adele Winkley. She said, I come from the corporate world financial sector. However, I knew there was something different about me from a young age and awareness. I'm using my gift through Reiki. Your story is wonderful. And thank you. So it is, even your experiences and with your one-to-ones, it's obviously a lot more personal, but your experiences and the way you convey them is inspiring and changing people's lives just by the way you spread and bring these messages. And that's a gift in itself. And we're blessed to be listening to you tonight, but it really is humbling listening to your story, especially because some of the significant things in your life, for example, 9/11 and your stepdaughter and your grandchild passing. So, they're so poignant stories, aren't they?
They are. The beauty of this journey, the awakened way, living consciously, which all of us are here to do, to shine our lights more brightly, is that, whether we're going to be a medium or a healer through Reiki or a teacher or an artist or simply a parent, a mom. I don't mean simply, but I mean, this life is not all about having a big successful career. We're here to love each other and to shine our light. The beauty of the mediumship path for me has been the side effect of trying to connect more clearly. I have awakened to these truths I shared with you along the way, and it's allowed me to share with others this light that burns brighter all the time. And I can feel the effect that has on people, and nothing turns the light up brighter than that, to say now we're shining brighter together. And it's like dominoes, isn't it? The lights go up all around the planet, turn up brighter, and we light up our world that way. This is why we're here. This is our calling.
It is our calling, and I appreciate you spreading that word. And I always talk about, people being lighter and brighter and more rounded and grounded. Those are the things that I talk about when we work with spirit, and it's amazing. I know some people in the room, and I know there's mixed levels of abilities, but what would you say to somebody who has had that awakening and they're sat there now going, what do I do next? Because as a child, I had nowhere to go. I didn't, because it wasn't where it was today. What would you give that? How would you help those people who are saying, I've had the awakening, where do I go next?
You go within, expand your awareness beyond the story, put your name on it, your personal story. The awakening means I realize I'm far more than this story. I am a beautiful light. And in that awareness, you ask of the higher self, what's next for me? Because there is no one answer fits all. Some people learn best through reading, and your guides will guide you to the best books. Some people learn simply by meditation, just being out in nature. What is it that's going to help you to get the greater insights and know the next step? Really, when you get on this path, you no longer need to plan. I used to facilitate strategic planning sessions for companies, management groups, which is so left brain. I did that for just a couple of years after I retired when we got off the boat. And now I just can't even go there because it's so left brain. But that was all about the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. And now it's here and now, being present. Sure, you still have to do a little planning. That's part of human life. But I know that what the spirit world puts in our path when we're aligned with the heart is so much greater than any 5-year plan the Suzanne story could come up with. So each person has that connection. It's a matter of learning to tune into that, connect with it, and simply be guided here and now, every moment. That's what makes it exciting to wake up in the morning. I know I'm guided. I trust the plan of the day, as we used to say in the Navy, is going to unfold as I open to it.
So in some ways then, is the plan to have no plan?
Well, my plan is to be guided. I have no idea what lies ahead for me. I'm so excited because I know it's going to be better than anything I could have come up with. 5 years ago, even, I would have been panicking. Well, I have to know what's next. I have to know this, and this. And it's not. It's every moment is this beautiful blank canvas. We get to create something even better than what came up before. That's what the Creator does. That's what creation is all about. Taking this beauty that we have around us and making something even more beautiful. Boy, we got off the topic of mediumship, but to me, this show is called That's the Spirit. And we're coming to recognize that it's spirit that makes all of this possible. It is flowing through us. And that's why we can connect with loved ones, because our loved ones don't die. They are spirit just as we are. Therefore, we can connect with them.
Beautiful. And you are right. That's the spirit. And it is all about spirituality and spiritualism. And one of the things that, I try and do every day is trying to put the word spirit back into those words. And you've truly helped me do that this evening. One of the things that I would like to ask is that where do you see spirituality and spiritualism as a movement? And how can we, because everything you've just said for the last 54 minutes is hitting every chord in my body. It's like bang, 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 and it is just lighting. It's lighting the room. How can we as people, and what's the plan for us to really try and bring this to a greater audience and to help people to understand spiritualism and spirituality that bit more? What can we do?
Well, you're doing it right now, Julian, by using social media and our technology. It's made our world so much smaller. The beautiful thing is that spirituality is becoming the mainstay, because dogmatic religion that tries to put people in a box and tell them what to believe is no longer working, because people are waking up. They're coming to know that I am a unique expression of the God source. I am spirit's unique lens into this world, each one of us. So why do we have to choose a belief system? So spirituality is following our unique path, but being guided by the heart. And then finding like-minded individuals whose view is similar and just flowing. And that's why I'm not sure about attendance in church anymore for those who are true spiritualists or any church. but yet the principles of spiritualism speak to my heart. I remember when Susan, my stepdaughter, first passed, I went looking for a medium, and I found medium Anne Gaiman, whose biography I wrote in The Priest and the Medium, and she was a spiritualist with a capital S. I had never heard of this. I didn't know it was a philosophy and a science and a religion. And I went and I read their principles, and I said, well, I have no religion, but I believe all of those. That's my philosophy. And there are other religions like that. Unity is, and the science of mind. They have their own philosophies. Every religion has one thing, and I can't make that blanket statement. Most of the major religions, I believe, have one common thing, and that's the golden rule. You know, so my religion, as Rumi said, I believe, is love. And everybody knows that because that's who we are. That's our basis. And freedom is what every soul longs for. And that's why we don't like to be boxed in by dogma anymore. So you will see personal spirituality coming to the forefront, and people no longer afraid to talk about what they believe, to be free to experiment, to experience their own divinity. And we'll see people becoming more open to each other's beliefs. That's why I no longer say the M word. I say it aloud. I am a medium, and so proud to serve in that way.
Amen. That's very much so. You know, when I came back from Arthur and I was always more spiritual than religious. And I didn't like some of the constraints of some of the religions, because I wanted to be more free and a wider spirit. And when I sat down with my guides, there's a bench I go by the sea, and my guide just came into me and said, 3 principles to your religion, Julian. Be love. So look after yourself, love yourself, and look after yourself. Give love, which is empathy and being more patient, and provide evidence of everlasting love. And those were the 3 things that came to me, and that's why, honestly, it was like that changing. And I was huge in the corporate world. You know, I was running £50 million businesses, and all of those things. And a park bench just said 3 things to me that just completely resonated, and that was truly unbelievable. And a lot of things that you're saying tonight, you know, are amazing because they just chime all of my bells.
Well, I can feel it in you, and you have very wise guides, but you also just radiate that loving energy, and it's no wonder the spirit world is drawn to you.
Thank you. I'm humble, and I every night I go to bed, I just say thank you very much and look after my family. That's what I always say. That's what I do. We're sort of running out of time a little bit, but I'd like to ask you a question. Where do you see what's 2019 for Suzanne Gieseman, and where are you going, and you know, how are you spreading this love, and how can people come with you and interact with you, and because I'm sure after tonight's show, there's lots of people who obviously who know you. There'll be people who don't, because we're talking to probably a much wider audience. And how can they get in contact with you? What can you?
Well, you're making me laugh because I just spent 5 minutes telling you I don't plan anymore, Julian. But truly, you do have to plan. And I have. It's crazy. 2019 is not even here yet, and I have a major event about every 2 weeks. I'm flying somewhere or speaking at a major conference or a class or workshop or teaching mediumship. I also have monthly online webinars to teach spirituality as well as mediumship. I'll be finishing a book. I have my online classes, probably another Hemisync CD in the works. It's a little crazy, but it's wonderful crazy. So I invite people to the awakenedway.org or SuzanneGieseman.com to check out the calendar of events and the many tools and videos there to help people understand more about what this is about and to open hearts and minds to the reality of the greater reality of which we're a part.
It just sounds amazing. And do you know what? Sometimes people write comments in, and this is Lynn Spencer says, those are the things you've taught me, and I'm eternally grateful. You gave me the courage to follow my heart. And that's amazing. And I think that's a fitting end to an amazing show. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of a very busy schedule. I know how busy you are. Thank you for showing the confidence in the show and in myself. I really do appreciate that. And you know, it has been amazing to see you on here. We hope we can get you on again, maybe
I'd
towards
love
the latter
to.
part
It's a
of
pleasure.
2019. And you know, just keep being who you are and doing what you're doing, because you know you really are affecting people's lives, and you're changing them for the good, because you know you're shining light maybe in some of the darkest places in the world, and everyone should be congratulated for that. And it really is a pleasure to meet you and have you on the show this evening.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for joining us.
Good evening. God bless, my love, and we'll speak again soon.
All right, thanks, Julian.
Thank you. Take care. Good night, my love. Well, what can I say? That was truly unbelievable. What a show. What a lady.